Repetition is the engine that powers the rhythm of speech and writing. From political oratory to sacred verse, writers repeat not by accident, but by design. In this lesson, we'll uncover how Anaphora, Epistrophe, Symploce, and Polyptoton shape meaning through the art of repetition. Hi, I'm Peter Dominic, and this is your microlecture where we make lessons accessible, simple, and clear. Let's start with Anaphora. Have you ever repeated a phrase or word at the beginning of your speech or writing over and over because you were passionate about it? So that's you using Anaphora without even realizing it. Now, when we say Anaphora, it is the repetition of words or phrases at the beginning of sentences or lines. And this technique is great for making a point stick and creating a kind of rhythm or momentum, making it a good technique when you want to emphasize a point. When I say rhythm, what I mean is Anaphora creates a pattern in speech or writing. And when I say momentum, every time the phrase is repeated, the meaning becomes stronger and the emotion grows. And it feels like the speaker is pushing harder to emphasize something. Let me give you an example. Here's a famous example from Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Now, notice how the phrase "let freedom ring" opens each line. So that's Anaphora. And it makes the speech more memorable and powerful, right? So it is used to emphasize an idea, build rhythm, and help the audience retain meaning. This is why Anaphora is used in politics, poetry, preaching, and even marketing. Now, come to think of this, how would the phrase "let freedom ring" feel if said only once? What do you think? Now, I'm wondering, we said that Anaphora refers to a speech or writing style that uses repeated words or phrases at the beginning of lines or clauses. Now, take a look at this excerpt from William Blake's poem, London. All these lines begin with "in every," and there's even an attempt to repeat the phrase "in every cry of" in the first two lines, right? So, the words and the arrangement aren't completely identical each time, but the pattern still creates a strong sense of emphasis. So, my question is this an Anaphora or not? What do you think? Exactly, it's still an Anaphora. Because even slightly different repetitions count as Anaphora. It doesn't always have to be word for word identical. And this variation actually sharpens the meaning and increases the urgency. It shows how everyone in London is affected, from grown men to babies, right? So don't stress about perfect repetition. If your sentence starts the same way with intention, it's Anaphora, and it's working. Writers use this to create both unity and variation, just like verses in a song. It's also a move seen in poetry, legal writing, political statements, and even songs. And speaking of political statements, I'm sure you're all familiar with this statement. So, democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We can notice that the phrase the people, okay, is repeated at the end of each phrase in the code, right? So the repeated phrase the people becomes the focus of the sentence, and it's a rhetorical tool that reinforces the idea that democracy is entirely centered on its citizens, and it highlights that the purpose of government is to serve its citizens, not to control or exploit them. But can we consider this an anaphora? What do you think? Democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Okay, it's not. It's actually the closest relative of anaphora, which is called epistrophe. So, what do we mean by epistrophe? Epistrophe is the repetition of words or phrases at the end of sentences or lines. It adds emphasis, especially in arguments or speeches. So here is another example. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The repetition here is not at the start, as we can notice, but at the end of each phrase, right? So if anaphora happens at the start, epistrophe happens at the end, okay? And each repetition of truth tightens the meaning. It doesn't just ask for truth alone, it insists on every angle of it. For example, the first one, which is the truth, is referring to the basic factual version. And with the repetition of another one, or the whole truth, it refers to the full story with nothing left out. And the last one, which is nothing but the truth, it's something with no exaggeration, falsehood, or misleading additions. So repeating words at the end, or what we call epistrophe, versus the beginning, or what we call anaphora, creates very different effects, even if they both use repetition. So it will just depend on your intention, on your purpose, or let's say on the effect you want to achieve. For example, in anaphora, the repeated opening feels like a strong claim, okay? Almost like commanding attention. It signals to your audience that each sentence is part of a pattern. Or let's say you want to start strong or build momentum, then you may use anaphora. On the other hand, you can use an epistrophe if you want to leave a lasting impression on a particular idea, because the last word or phrase of a sentence is what listeners remember most. But what if you can't decide whether to repeat at the beginning or the end? What if you want to start strong and end powerfully? In that case, you don't have to choose. You can actually use both, and that brings us to a technique called Symploce. Let me read the proverb for you. For one of a nail, the shoe was lost. For one of a shoe, the horse was lost. For one of a horse, the rider was lost. For one of a rider, the message was lost. For one of a message, the battle was lost. For one of a battle, the kingdom was lost. Now, this passage is structured like a cascading chain of events, starting with something small, which is a missing nail, and ending in the downfall of an entire kingdom. So each line begins with the phrase for one of a, which also means because of the lack of. And this creates a rhythmic domino-like effect where one loss leads directly to the next. So basically, each line shows how a seemingly minor thing, which is a missing nail, eventually leads to the loss of an entire kingdom. Again, what happens when you combine anaphora and epistrophe? Of course, you'll get Symploce, and it's the repetition at both the start and the end of a line. Think of it as a sandwich method. You repeat the bread at the beginning and the end, and the filling in between carries the message. Are they considered a Symploce? What do you think? So while you're thinking, let me read the sentences for you. Love is the irresistible desire to be irresistibly desired. So that's from Robert Frost. And then we have from Dr. Seuss. Today, you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. So, it begs the question, are they considered a Symploce? No, it's not. It's what we call Polyptoton. So Polyptoton is a figure of speech that involves the repetition of words derived from the same root. So this one is a bit different. It doesn't repeat the same exact word. It repeats the same root word or base word, but in different forms. Now let's take a look at the previous examples. In the first sentence, Frost plays with two root words, desire and resist. He repeats each root using different forms. This is called Polyptoton. You have irresistible, and this is an adjective, and you repeat it by modifying the word and changing it to irresistibly, which is an adverb. You also have desire, which is a noun, and modified into the past participle form of the verb desired. So with the use of Polyptoton, it shaped the message to convey that real love feels like a cycle. You long for someone and you long to be longed for. So that's in itself a Polyptoton. Now let's take a look at the next example. Dr. Seuss is playing with one simple word, you, and that's the root word. But notice how he repeats it in different ways. You as a subject, and you were as a made-up word that means even more you. It's an invented comparative form that's made to rhyme with truer. Okay? You were is a great example of poetic license. Poetic license is when writers or speakers intentionally break the rules of grammar, spelling, or word use for creative effect. So in this example, Dr. Seuss turns the word you into a whole celebration of being yourself. Now, let's try something a little more intense and classic. This one's from Shakespeare's play Troilus and Cressida. As we can notice, Shakespeare is using Polyptoton, which is repeating the same root word in different forms. So for example, we have here skillful, which is an adjective, and then we have skill, which is a noun. Here, we go from describing someone's ability to naming the ability itself. And then we also have here fierce, which is again an adjective, and then fierceness, which is a noun. It's like zooming in on what makes someone fierce, right? Though valiant isn't derived from the same root, it ties the sequence together thematically. It adds bravery on top of all those traits. And we have to remember that Polyptoton doesn't always mean that the exact same word is changed just by adding suffixes like ness or li or any affixes. It can also include words that share the same root or word family. even if they aren't strict transformations of each other, just like when strong is repeated or reinforced with the use of the word strength. So just a quick recap. Anaphora repeats at the start to command attention and build momentum. Epistrophe repeats at the end to leave a lasting impression or emotional punch. Symploce does both. So beginning and end for double emphasis, a combination of anaphora and epistrophe. And Polyptoton plays with word forms, so that's root play, repeating the same root in different ways to explore depth, meaning, and variation. Each one uses repetition, but each creates a different effect. It all depends on what you want your words to do. Okay? So here's something to think about for our exit questions. We've seen how powerful repetition can be when used well, right? But what do you think might happen if a writer or a speaker uses too much repetition? Where do you draw the line between emphasis and excess? So I'd really love to know your thoughts. Drop your answer in the comment section below, and let's talk about how repetition can either elevate or overwhelm. Thank you so much.